Good afternoon there, Marty. How are you? Well, actually, it's good morning. You're on the West Coast, and I'm on the East Coast. I'd like to say good morning to Dr. Marty Rossman. We are Mission Possible. Today's theme is turning worries upside down. I'm retired Sergeant Major Joe VanFonda, Wounded Warrior. I'm also the CEO for the Disabled Veterans Mass Foundation. And Dr. Marty Rossman is actually my co-host, wonderful individual, founder of Mind, Body, and Spirit. And I'm going to hand it over to Marty. And Marty, I'm hoping you can introduce yourself to our new listeners and so forth, and tell us a little bit about yourself and background in terms of how did you get to studying and actually being, working in that field of mind, body, and spirit.
Thank you, Sergeant Major, and good morning to you. Yeah, I'm a physician. I've been practicing medicine for 53 years now, and was always interested in helping the urban poor, and so went into practice doing that, and found that was very difficult. We're dealing mostly with the chronic illnesses of hypertension, diabetes, heart disease, lung disease, and so on in a relatively poor population who's stressed all the time and tries to compensate for it by eating too much sugar, smoking, drinking, and all the kinds of ways of coping that I call the toxic coping, because the only problem with them is that they're toxic and over years and years and years, they cause chronic disease. And then we doctors are taught to treat that with medications, which does help with that. It helps to manage them. It helps people live longer. It helps people avoid complications. But I didn't find that filling people's shopping bags up with medications or taking them away or filling them again or taking them away, which I call it kind of the dance of chronic illness. Every 6 weeks, I'd either give somebody a new medication or I would take them off some old medication because they were having side effects. And never really got to the heart of things. Did a house call practice in East Oakland for a year and a half, and to see how people lived and really why it was so difficult to get people to change when we knew that if they did change some things, um, their health would improve, they would feel better. Even some of their chronic illnesses we know now can actually go away. So there were no real revelations. I mean, basically, what I think I saw was people are doing the best they can to cope with the daily stresses of life, which are always there, whether you're rich or poor, but um, the poor have other problems on top of that. And basically, life is when you're dealing with food and you're dealing with no money and you're dealing with dangerous neighborhoods and you're dealing with criminality and you're dealing with being one down all the time and trying to climb up from the bottom. There are people like you, Joe, who started like that and made something of themselves and give to the community. And we've had a number of them, your colleagues and friends, on this show, and we'll continue to have them as really shining examples of people who could pull themselves up from their bootstraps, and they are worthwhile examples, but not everybody can do that. The odds are against you, and there's a heavy burden going on. So then I was also doing emergency medicine at the time, but what I started to see after a couple of years is that so much of medicine, if you're trying to get people to change their lifestyle so that they feel better and that they're healthier and that they reduce their risks of major illnesses, it's psychology. It's how you're using your interactions with people and how they're using their minds. And so I came into studying things like stress reduction, relaxation. Later on, mindfulness came into it, guided imagery, visualization. It's like how are you using your mind, or are you using your mind? Most people don't really use their minds very effectively. And one of the habits and very common behaviors that we all have is worry. When I wrote my last book, which was called The Worry Solution, I was trying to think, how can I do the most good in a book? And I was thinking the biggest risk factor we have for chronic illness in this country because it lies beneath the smoking, the drinking, the bad eating, the anxiety, and the depression is worry. And so I decided to write a book about worry and see what worry really is and how people worry and why people worry and what to do if you're a worrywart, because that can be changed. You know, the mind in a sense is the software and the brain is the hardware, and we've learned a lot uh, about the hardware in the last 15 or 20 years that we've called the decade. It's 2 decades of the brain.
Mhm.
And the mind, the way you think about things, is the software. And what we're trying to do with Mission Possible is teach people really the 7 most useful techniques that I've learned over the last 50 years to help people work more skillfully with their minds, use their minds to help themselves rather than hurt themselves, and to sort out what's worth worrying about and what's not worth worrying about. A lot of it has to do with things, what you can control and what you can't, and put it into some self learning programs. And that's when you and I met, and you saw an opportunity to apply this to and offer it to veterans and first responders who certainly have their own unique kinds of stress on top of the usual kinds of stress, and that's what we've been offering. And I really thank you again and again for inviting me to do that, because I think it's important that we take
Marty,
care of.
it's always a pleasure, and I'm glad that we're working together. We're talking about, all life challenges, and what can be managed, and, the tools that are in Mission Possible, what tools can actually help me review and look how my day is, provide some techniques or some exercise to help me work through small or large problems and so forth. So I think that we have a great start here, and we think that, while you're in the military, we're trained to work towards a mission. Everything is a mission. And we train towards that. We train as we fight. So we go to the field, we're training environment, we're training as if we're fighting. So we're always in that environment, and it's just you get so institutionalized, you get so structured in terms of that.
Right,
Right.
right. Yeah, and we've talked before about the need for uh, maybe not something as intense as basic training to
Mm,
get out of it when you get out of the military, but some kind of program that really focuses, okay, you're shifting environment, you're not in a battle all the
right.
time, you're things are different out here. Here's some different skills that you can use to help yourself reduce.
Right. You operate at a high tempo, and
Right.
your adrenaline, especially when you're in a combat environment.
Oh,
When you're in
and
that environment, your senses go up from your hearing to your smell to, how you feel. You just all
yeah,
your senses are widened, your peripheral is widened,
yeah, your
and
heart
you can
your heart rate is
exactly,
faster, your blood pressure is
absolutely.
higher, your senses are more acute. Your so all that fight or flight response is up to a point is useful. When
Mhm.
you go into combat,
Right.
it's but when you're not in combat. Um, People are just stewing in those juices. If you don't know how to turn it off or turn it down,
Mhm.
you're basically stewing in those physiologic juices that are getting you. You're ready to go. You're ready to go into the fight or into the battle or into
Mhm.
the big game or whatever it is. But that physiologic state, we think, was designed by Mother Nature to help you survive a threat to your life. You run faster, you are stronger, your senses are more acute. So it helps you survive that situation, which in normal life, military life is a little bit different. Certainly, combat life is totally different. But in normal life, those situations tend to be short lived. You encounter a mugger, something like that. And then they're over in a fairly short period of time, and your body goes through changes that put it back into that more balanced physiologic state. You come back to rest. A lot of times people don't do that, especially if if you've got PTSD, if you've had some horrendous experiences, if you can't get them out of your mind, you can't work through them, you can't come back to baseline. And that
Mhm.
constant stress, it's like running a car on nitromethane fuel. It'll go faster, but it won't last as long. And it's really kind of at the heart of all the chronic diseases that we
Mhm.
see. So primary medical practice is, I sometimes joke, but it's not a joke. 90% of it is figuring out what's anxiety and worry, and what is a physiologic situation that we need
Mhm.
to kind of analyze and treat medically. So I've spent a lot of my time, besides practicing, in researching and trying to find ways to help people and teach people to do some self-regulation practices themselves. And as you and I have talked, they are practices. Just like you said, you go to the gym to build your biceps and
Mhm.
your lats and your traps and your core, and you go to the gym a few times a week or maybe more, and you work on those muscles. Well, the muscle in between your ears, uh, also, it has patterns and it can be developed. It can be polished. You can be more skillful at coping with the stresses. It's not going to eliminate stress, but it will improve your ability to cope with or adapt to stress so that you suffer less and hopefully you have better outcomes. That's what we're trying to teach in Mission Possible.
Right. And what are some good, I mean, think about it. I mean, we have individuals out there, Marty, that are actually having the same stressors on a daily basis. I mean, you can have your daily stressor that pops up. I just got in a vehicle accident, or, you know, you know, got a flat tire, or, I got to work
Right,
longer. I have to pick up the kids,
right,
or,
right,
or by the way, I can't buy food for my family. There's a veteran, or they're having
right.
insecurity at some point, can't pay my electricity or whatever. So, but that's something that can pop up. But what happens when it continues?
Well, the problem that's why I picked worry as really the focus, Joe, and
Well,
because what
what,
worry
right,
is continuing to stress yourself by going over and over and over the same kind of
right, right.
thoughts in
So,
your mind. And what I do, it's not wrong to worry. There's plenty of things to worry about. Like you said, if you can't feed your family, you can't pay for shelter over their head. That's a real worry. And your mind is trying to solve that problem and figure out how you solve that problem. And so there's two kinds of worry. I call them good worry and bad worry. Good worry is problem solving. Good worry is, what am I going to do here? I can't afford food. What are my options? Where can I go for help? Where can I get employment? How am I going to do this? And it's like your mind going over and over this problem, like you go through a ball of tangled
right.
twine, finding the loose ends and pulling out and getting some purchase there, and then getting stuck again and keeping going after it. So that's a problem solving kind of worry. We have a brain unlike any other animal we know that can envision possible futures and that can think in the future. So we can problem solve in the future to a certain extent. So that's what I call good worry. And we address that in Mission
Mhm.
Possible, and how to worry even better, more effectively, more efficiently, how to refine that process of problem solving. But then there's what I call bad worry, and bad worry is just scaring yourself. It's just
Mhm.
going over and over and over the stuff you can't do anything about directly, but continuing to tell yourself the story and go over it in your mind, which scares you. Your brain is listening. Your brain doesn't tell the difference between the story you're telling yourself and what's going on out there in the world. So when you're telling yourself those scary stories and going over it and over it and over it, things you can't do anything about, um, what's going to happen with the election? Well, there are things you can do. Whatever side you're on, you can donate money, you can write postcards, you can talk to people, you can vote. There are certain things you can do. Then there's other things you can't do. So instead of scaring yourself over and over, we teach people. I think today's topic is this almost silly technique that works gangbusters, which we call turning worry upside down, which is
Mm.
take the thing you're worrying about, turn it upside down, put it in a positive sense, and instead of worrying about the wrong person winning an election, imagine that your person is winning the election. And it may make no difference at all in terms of the real world outcome, but where it will make a difference is in you, because you'll be reviewing, you'll be seeing your favorite up there being the president of the United States and what that will bring about. And so it may not change the results of the election, but you'll be living with a story that makes you feel better and is just as realistic as the other one, since you don't know what that outcome is. So I often say, and other people have said, that worry, what I call bad worry, is really an upside down prayer. It's thinking constantly about what you don't want to have happen. And, any of our listeners that are golfers,
Mhm.
or are you a golfer, Joe?
I like to golf. I'm not saying I'm a
Yeah.
golfer now, but I
Right,
do
but you
like to
like to
golf.
golf. So golf is always my favorite example. You're on the
Right.
tee box and there's a lake off to the right, okay? And you don't want to hit the ball in the lake. But if that's what you're thinking about, don't hit the ball in the lake, don't hit the ball in the lake, don't hit the ball in the lake. The mental picture, because there's no mental picture for no. So the mental picture is hitting the ball in the lake. And that's what you're going to do. You're going to hit the ball in the lake. So what you have to do is you have to pick a target, which is where you want to hit the ball, not where you don't want to hit the ball. And if you focus on the target, and this is, I'm sure, true probably in riflery and in
Oh yeah,
all kinds of things. Like, you have to pick the target, you focus on the target, you put everything else out of your mind, and it makes you more likely to hit your target. So
absolutely.
this so the same is true in life. Instead of getting more and more stressed about imagining these things happening that you don't want to, turn it around, put your energy into what you want to see happen, and then use your energy to address those worries that you can possibly do something about and put it into problem solving. And that's one of the major things that we teach you in Mission Possible.
It's definitely it's easier said or done.
Oh,
'Cause,
absolutely. What
you know,
isn't?
so yeah, I mean we
What
have
isn't?
a course here, right? It's free,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
It's valuable, easy to understand, utilize tools. I think the enemy in this program is time. Just trying to find a time not to go through this program. Of course it's and there's no time limit on it. You can have it for life, but finding the time for themselves to sit down and relax,
yeah,
turn things off,
yeah.
and just relax a little bit. You
It's
know,
very, it's very
I think
countercultural.
that's the hard part is for some reason that's the hardest thing to do is to try to shut your mind down from racing and just relax a little bit and then just sit, just think about, what emotions are you feeling, then think about those emotions. And
Yeah,
then, of course, if those emotions are going to either ruin your day, let's work on it, and just relax and think about it. And what you can work towards problem solving, then you do so. What you can't control, you pull it. I mean, I think the hardest part is trying to find that time. I'm fine, not me finding personally, but I have others and so forth. And if you think about it, Marty, when I was growing up in the morning, I mean, not in the morning, when I was growing up as a young boy, everything was closed on Saturday and Sunday, right? So, you know, that's how we couldn't find a store open on Saturday or Sunday. And then as I was getting older, whatever, next stores are open for a half a day on Saturday, and then eventually they're open for a full day on Saturday, and nothing was open on Sunday. And then of
yeah.
course
Now they're
Sunday,
20.
everybody's working on Sunday. So everything is in such a hurry,
Yeah,
right? And then you got
24/7.
then you got TV has changed drastically, and then the electronics and digital world and age we're in, from email to texting to social media, to TV, of course, as well as I mean that everything is just the media, the economic landscape. But you have all these negatives being thrown at us right now, right?
Right.
And then you have your family dynamics, your life challenges that's happening within your family. You have children, you don't have children, work is bothering you, and having issues at home. I mean, there's everything can be added at one time. So how do you
Absolutely.
just focus on the need and what you need to survive for that day, or do you focus on all the negative attributes thrown at you at the same time? So how do you navigate that? And what's your thought?
I think you're right. There's a huge number of factors that sort of mitigate against this. It's also people feel guilty when they take time for
Hmm.
themselves, even if they can find it, especially if your family's in stress. It's very counterculture where, uh, we're just go, 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 go. We don't
Hmm.
really
Absolutely.
don't honor it seems like you're doing nothing when you take the time to relax, but you're really not doing nothing. You're doing a
Mm.
huge amount for not only yourself but also the people that rely on you. Because the model that I use is, well, before I go into that, there's some of the techniques that we teach, like this one, the turning worry upside down, takes no time at all.
Mm.
It just takes an awareness, and it takes a little time to think about it, do it,
Hmm.
practice with it. If you practice this 6 to 10 times, which takes a minute each, you get it. And then you can use that on the run. So this one takes no time. The one that takes the time, the deep relaxation kind of meditation takes a little time, maybe 10 to 20 minutes a day. Some of certainly the insight things you're talking about. Um, but those also fall on a spectrum, Joe. So it's not like
Mm.
we're thinking that people
Right.
are bad. Like we've been talking about, people who have no food, they have no shelter for their family. Those take way high priority over contemplating your navel and thinking about how you got to be the way that you are.
Hmm.
But you also need to take care of yourself to be of use to your family and your community. And the it seems very far away from a combat experience, and it is. But in my world and in my practice where I am, which is a pretty privileged suburban community, um, it's the housewives who are taking care of two or three
Hmm.
kids, and they may have a job as well, and they want every kid to have every advantage, and they're
Absolutely. Yeah.
driving and they get the nest. So they're just nuts with it. So the model that I use, we used to use, like if you're on the airplane and the plane starts going down, the oxygen masks come down, and they always tell you put yours on first. Don't put it on your kid first because your kid won't be able to save you. You put it on yourself, and then you can help the others. And then I think an even more interesting thing to know is that when your heart pumps regularly or irregularly through your whole life, and if your heart stops pumping, you
Mm.
die. It's the most basic physiologic function we have. So the heart's pumping an average of 72 beats a minute. It's pushing a bolus of blood through your arteries, and that carries oxygen to every cell, and it fuels the fire of life and makes you able to do things. So the very first, so it pumps, and this bolus of blood comes out of the heart. The very first artery that comes off of your aorta, which is your big blood vessel,
Hmm.
is a small artery called the coronary artery, and that takes blood to your heart. So your heart takes a sip every time it pumps. Okay, it's not a pig, it doesn't take all the blood,
Hmm.
but every time it pumps fresh blood, it takes a sip to power the next pump, and then the whole body gets nourished with blood. And I think that's a good example that we have to find ways to build into our day ways of caring for ourselves that allows us to live like a human being and to heal and to recover and to enjoy and to have fun, but also to do the things that we're devoted to go to work, to have the energy to deal with that family member that may be having trouble. We need to, if you don't do that, then you're going to burn out. And when you burn out, then you're of no help to anybody, and people actually are needing to help you. And you know, that's not usually a way a person wants to live. It's certainly probably not a way that somebody who was in the military, where everything is based around doing for your group and your community and your core and your company and whatever you know, you devoted yourself to being a part of the unit and doing your part. Uh, so we want to help you get back to doing that in a different setting if you're having trouble with that. Does that make sense, Joe?
Oh, definitely. I mean, the whole structure of the way of living when you actually leave the military and you get out, that burden of their, no defect mentality. Think about it. So when you're in the military, especially the Marine Corps, there's a no defect mentality. I have to look the greatest in my uniform. I have to, be the fastest, the strongest, or, and the front runner, the best at shooting. I mean, you always aim for that. That's what we teach. We want the best out of you. And where your
Mm-hmm.
short failure is, you always seek self-improvement, one of those things.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's the mentality that we actually, we grow from
Mm-hmm.
the recruit through your career because you're always seeking self-improvement. There's always structure, definement, refinement.
Mm-hmm.
And the beauty is that you work with brothers and sisters from all over the United States that come from different backgrounds, you know, and so forth, character, fat, skinny, tall, short, and different nationalities, and it's just a wonderful thing, because you work cohesively together and so forth. So I think that when somebody leaves the military, they're taking some great positive attributes into society. They're taking teamwork, they're taking brotherhood, sisterhood, they're mission oriented, I know they're kind and I know they're approachable, they're professional, and somewhat athletic as well, because you're professional athletic and athlete in the military because you're PTing every day, twice a day sometimes and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
And you're cultured because you travel the country, the world. You see famine not only in a battlefield, but you see it in other countries and so forth. So you take all that back, and then you have a different perspective, not only you know locally where you're from or whatever. Some people never get out of the state that they live in, but you're globally cultured at some point, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and you come back and you appreciate your country even more because you know the value,
Mm-hmm.
that the United States has to offer. That's how I feel. There's a lot of value.
Mm-hmm.
Now, are we perfect? No,
Right.
no. But I think we're working towards perfection. We've been for
Mm-hmm.
a very, very long time, and
Mm-hmm.
our country should not have a no defect mentality, just like our communities, because that's what you feel when you leave the military. You feel like I just had 100 pounds is pulled off me. Wow. Now you're like, because you're held to the higher standard. You're used to being
Mm-hmm.
at that standard. And I'm not saying
Mm-hmm.
that you're dropping the ball or society has a lesser standard, but we're just more oriented towards structure, esprit de corps, spirit of a unit, we just highest
Right.
standard that we aim for. Well,
Well, there's a
and then you
lot.
feel pressured to maintain that consistently. So that's a big stress, Marty. And then when you leave the military, stress drops. But then again, your wills, when you're still in your mindset and how you operate is still at that certain pace. And then there's a lot of stress in terms of transitioning because you have to learn to slow down. You have to learn to speak a certain language, if you want to call it that. That's if you've
Well,
been in for a very, 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 very long time, like myself or so
right.
forth.
Well, tell me this, Joe. There's also, I imagine that there's that relief of stress in the short term,
Oh, yeah,
but then you find yourself in a different world, and you're not.
absolutely.
And you tell me if I'm wrong, because I haven't been in the military, but I think a lot about the military. I always have and studied military history and wondered about the military and wondered about the psychology of what it takes
Mhm.
to go through that whole process and to put yourself in harm's way for a cause and all that stuff. And I honor the military, um, and always have. Um, But it also seems like being in the military where things are structured and clear and where there's a chain of command and you learn your place and your
Mhm.
sergeant major gives you an order and then you go do it to the best of your ability, even though you might get killed. I mean, up to that point, but I know in a lot of cases, you're not going to get killed. They're just going to go clean the toilets or do whatever else your sergeant major has told you to do. There's a certain lack of stress in not having to figure out yourself what to do. There's, in other words, in having a structure, and having a community that supports that structure. So I imagine that when people get out, even if they get a good job and so on, I mean, which would make things much easier, but a lot of people don't get a good job. They're sort of floating about and wondering what's next. And I also imagine, and I've heard from veterans, that who survived combat experiences.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
treated a lot of World War II vets, and they said, and they didn't like to talk about their experiences much, but we would sometimes talk about them, and they would say, once you've been through combat, there's nothing like that you'll ever experience again in your life like that. And if you survive it,
Mm.
um, you've been at some kind of high level of arousal that you'll probably never get again, you
Mm.
know, and uh, and you wouldn't want to be in again. But there's that certain kind of thing that you're not going to feel again by becoming director of sales for a auto brake company,
Mhm.
and make a decent living in suburban Peoria or wherever you are. You're just not going to do that. Plus, you don't have the same community. You don't have your core of guys. You don't have your company mates. You don't have your officers. You don't have your non-coms. There's just a lot missing. You don't have people.
Well, my routine, Marty. I mean, my last
How did
job
you do it?
was
Yeah.
was regimental sergeant major for the Wounded Warrior Regiment for the United States Marine Corps. And
Uh-huh.
overseeing in non-medical case individuals and the Marines as well as the Navy that's been wounded, ill, and injured, transitioning out of the military. So I spent
Yeah.
many times traveling the country, going to VA hospitals. They're called the VISNs, Veterans Integrated Service Network. So I would visit our wounded warriors. We would actually move them to their, where they lived, and because they had all that support there. So that would, we were actually, if they're, um, you know, um, when they could move from Walker Bethesda or wherever they're at, we can actually move them to their locality to get that support. And so I would travel to these localities. Going to be up in Minnesota,
Uh-huh.
Tom was down there in Florida, burn unit in Texas, and so forth, Balboa. So I would spend my time visiting these wounded warriors, and to see the carnage in a hospital is just outweighs the carnage on the battlefield, believe it or not. Because not only are you seeing the carnage in the hospital, you're also dealing with, that the wife, the sister, mom, or dad, the daughter, whatever the case is. So all those, the family dynamics, so we're providing resources for them and so forth, making sure that,
Yeah.
they understand what's going on and so forth. So there's a lot. So we were very, very involved in terms of that, from the sergeant major commanding officer and to certain nonprofits that would actually come in and do a lot of work and so forth. So I was really entangled into that. And boy, it just it's very heavy on your heart. I mean, if you
Yeah.
see every day you go back to work and you're seeing that wounded warrior, right? You're seeing that carnage, you're seeing that amputee or the burn individual, and then the dynamics and the story that goes with that wounded warrior. You take it's difficult. You hold on to
Yeah.
it, and you see that every day. So you know, it's very somber, humbling at the same time.
Yeah.
And then you have to
Yeah.
do it again and again, and then, it's continuous.
Yeah.
And it's a value that you do. but you take away a lot of that and you hold on to it, because you're
Mm,
constantly in that environment. So it's a sad
yeah.
environment. But there's some great stories too, the resiliency of these wounded warriors that want to get up and move
Hmm.
forward and seek self-improvement, so forth, not
Yeah.
settling for that term that they have, your new normal. This is your new normal tells me that, hey, something, is it my new normal because something better happened to me, or is it something because of it's negative? And I always never liked that term, this is your new normal, because it automatically takes away who you are, and then you have to
Uh-huh.
settle for less. But that's the
Hmm.
term that they utilize. I never liked that. But yeah, it's
Hmm.
just interesting how life challenges, right? That's a life challenge, right? How
Right.
we hold on to those things. We
Yeah.
don't select them. We don't sit there and dwell on them and let's go back to that day or moment or that situation. They just pop up like a weed, Marty. Why?
Yeah.
Why do they
Exactly.
pop up like that sometimes? Is it because of it's been rooted, and it's there for a while, or we haven't found a way to pull that weed because it's been pushed on that back burner because of operational commitments, because we're constantly busy. And so what we're doing is we're just pushing it. Now that we're out, and we're not as working at that high tempo, are we decompressing a little bit, where now some of those things on the back burner are inching up forward,
Right.
and now we're like,
Right.
okay, now I'm thinking about it.
Right. You're in a safe place, and your unconscious as well. You've got, how about this? What are you going to do
Mm,
about this? How do you come to grips with this? What are your, and as we know, it's a very difficult thing to do. We're learning more and more about trauma, and we developed more trauma effective kinds of
mm,
approaches to both therapy and self care kinds of things. And it's not, I saw an interesting little article today, Joe, that there's a group that's pressing to rename post traumatic stress disorder, to
interesting.
name it post traumatic stress uh, incident or post traumatic. It's not that, it's take the disorder part of it off. And it does disorder you. It, as you know, it throws a monkey wrench into the
Mm,
machinery of the mind. But they're saying that in a lot of cases, it's not really an illness. It's something that people have not yet been able to resolve, and so we're still working on ways to resolve it better.
mm,
So it's a multifactorial problem. You've done so much, and I admire you so much for all that you've done, continuing after the military to work for the welfare of veterans, disabled veterans, and veterans with all kinds of problems. And, uh, we got to feed people, we got to house people. There's a
mm,
lot of treat their wounds, teach them to live with prosthetics and with disabilities, and try to find more ways to support them and nourish their resilience, because that's where the ability to say, okay, this was this was the shits. I didn't want this. I
mm,
didn't like this. I didn't ask for it. I don't deserve it. But here it is. And can you find that life energy to
mm.
say, okay, I'm going to do something about this. I'm going to take a step to do something about this. And so on that inner level, that's what we're trying to offer people. Can I look at a comment or a question? It's
Yeah, you have a couple of questions, and I think we have a few.
pursuant to what we're talking about. So Tom says, what can I do to better tell what's good worry and bad? It's hard in the moment to cast the worry aside and not feel it's legitimate and needs to be attended to. So for all the bad worries are piggybacking on the potential valid good worries. Later on, when I'm in a clearer state of mind, I can see that. But when I'm in high stress, my thinking is clouded and it seems like I let worry snowball and feel out of control. Thank you for that comment, Tom. And
Yeah, definitely.
that's par for the course,
Hmm.
when you're in the situation. I guess the major question I would ask myself in that situation is, what can I do? And because that's what separates the good worries from the bad worries. Is there something you can do about it? Is there something you can do about um, this situation? And that may take a little bit of thinking, but in a real emergency or urgent situation, um, you have the time you have. You have to really kind of think fast. So I would say, what can I do here? What do I need to do here? If it's
I would like to
and
know, I'm sorry to
what's
interrupt
that?
you, but
Go
you
ahead.
know, what type of worry? I think that's important to know as well, because, you know, let's identify. I mean, if someone is out there, you know, and they have
What the
concern about a
particular?
worry, yeah, what kind of
Yeah,
worry is it specifically?
yeah, yeah. Tom, maybe you can let us know. It sounds like a mixed worry. He also says another problem is I become so avoidant of experiencing stress or
Mhm.
bad feelings, I procrastinate
There we go.
and seek enjoyable activities or foods to distract myself from the stress. In a cycle where I, of course, then get more stress later because I've been running from the stress and not getting things done. Do you have
Absolutely.
any kind of advice for breaking out of that kind of cycle? One of the, one of the exercises that we teach you in Mission Impossible um, for starting to identify that worry, Tom, is writing everything down.
Mhm.
And it's on is like there's a place where I just have you sit down and just write down everything you've been worrying about.
Use that
Big,
journal.
big or small, important or petty, just write it all down without editing. And then we have the next step is to sort them into columns of things that you can do something about potentially. You may or may not choose to do it.
Mhm.
And then things that no matter how badly you want to, you just can't do anything about it except pray or visualize, but you can't actually do something about it by taking an action. That's a very, very helpful thing that in itself is likely to reduce your stress and give you some more clarity. What are your thoughts, Joe?
I think you're absolutely right, Dr. Marty Rossman. But here's the thing, okay? Yeah, okay, so we procrastinate all the time, all of us, right? So we all procrastinate, especially when, you know, you get that big rooted thing that just popped up, you know, and you know it's a problem, you know it's not going to go away, and you know it's going to be painful, but you got to go through the process, sadly, let it be you got to pay that big bill that's outstanding, or, you know, the big insurance is coming up, or yeah, I mean, it could be anything. It could be a simple dynamic
Mm-hmm.
in a household or whatever the case is that you're dreading because it's negative. You know, it's negative.
Mm-hmm.
You're afraid to approach the negative. And so you stray away from the negative, and by doing a different activity, keep your mind off of that negative because you don't want to address it. You know it's there. So
Yep.
that's just hanging out, you know, smoke checking you, and get that monkey on your back. And then you
Yep.
start either, you know, drinking a beer, eating, whatever the case is, and you know, I'll deal with it tomorrow. So you're kicking that can
Right.
down the road. That's not helping you, brother. You're gonna have to figure it out and just attack it, open that door, because I once told a very good friend of mine, a young man, that he afraid of bad weather, storms, hurricane, tornadoes. And I said to him, if you get really smart, about learning about weather, weather patterns, how does it happen? Is it seasonal? Hurricanes, tornadoes, how does it work? What is hail? And so forth. Your mind is going to get so exercised. You're going to want more of that, and you're not going to fear it anymore, you know, and because you're going to understand it, and you're going to reason with yourself that, hey, it's okay. I think you need to look at it at that perspective. That's just my thought, Marty.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting because both you and Tom, one of the things that I generally don't address is that there's been research that worry is a way of not facing your
Mm,
real issues. So
absolutely.
just like you said, and writing is a very useful way. Journal writing, diary writing, sitting
Mm,
down when your mind is overwhelmed and confused, and what do I do first, and what do I really need to address? Sitting down for about 20 minutes and just writing out how you're feeling and what's going on
mm,
is often a very clarifying thing to do. And it sorts things out in terms of, all right, here's a bunch of stuff I'm worrying about. I don't
mm,
really need to worry about. I can't do anything about it anyhow. Here's what's left over here. This scares me and this is too big for me. I don't know how I'm going to deal with that. That's a place to seek help. That's a place where you mobilize the resources that you need in order to deal
mm,
with that problem. Just like when you
right.
have a mission, either in or out of the military, you have a mission, you got to look. What do I need in order to get from here to there? What are the
Absolutely.
people? What are the people I need? What are the equipment I need? What are the munitions I need? What is the, what do I need in order to get there, and who do I need? And you lay out the plan, and that's part of the good worry.
Mhm.
That's another one of the lessons is how to be more effective at, call it effective action planning. Once you've identified where you want to go, how do I get from here to
Mm.
there?
I say put the worry as a goal and make it a short-term goal so you approach it, right? Now, there are some worries out there you can actually make it a long-term goal to accomplish or get to, because you have other obstacles.
Right.
Well, Marty, well, actually, Tom is thanking us both. He says he appreciates us, and I appreciate you, Tom. Thanks for tuning in and so forth, brother. And I want to tell you this, Tom, if you're listening, all life challenges I believe can be managed. I think we can do that, individually, and I think that you need to just it's easier said or done. I understand that because you have to, every situation dictates something differently, but it's okay to take a step back and look at that problem, outside of who you are, or even if that problem is related to you. But take a step back and just look at that situation, that's bothering you, and just analyze a little bit and try to do the opposite, what you would do. You would run away, now approach it, whatever that problem may be, and he's also saying that, his stressors, all sorts of things, work, state of the world, opinions of others, not doing well enough, though. I agree with you, brother. I says that I think the media it's bad news. I think Marty and I talked about the media.
Oh
I know
yeah.
and I know you're not a big fan of the media as well, Marty.
I'm a fan of, it's like so many things. It's very, very powerful, and it's just that
Mm,
the um it's how it's used and it's what it's
I think
aimed
so.
at. And right now it's uh we could get lost in that one for a long time. We
Well, people, a lot of individual. I mean, I know a lot of people. They're up on their community news and the local news or whatever, and then their news they see on TV from whatever news channel it may be, whatever. And
yeah,
it seems like politics is always in conversations these days, or
yeah,
so that's interesting. And then of course school shootings that and then of course blaming and pointing the finger
yeah,
or natural disasters from the fires in California to the floods and so forth, and recently, sadly, North Carolina and West,
yeah,
my heart goes out to
absolutely.
North Carolina. My heart goes out to those communities that are sadly destroyed, and the loved ones that lost their loved ones and so forth. So it's just a sad time, I mean, if me, I like to keep up on what's happening in the United States. I like to listen to what's happening. I like to see what's happening within communities, especially our veteran populations. What's the
Mm-hmm.
data look like and so forth. And
Mm-hmm.
that helps me understand where the need is. And if we look at what DVNF has been doing for the last few years, we have adjusted our programs to provide those services and programs to where the data
Mm-hmm.
is telling us. And Marty, right
Mm-hmm.
now, I'm seeing stressors in the veteran community in terms of staying in their homes. If they're having problems paying for electricity or their mortgage or rent because something, a life dynamic, a life challenge hit them, and they're skipping a beat somewhere, trying to stay in their home and paying their bills, and then of course,
Mm-hmm.
homeless to housing program that we have, now we have a program because we're understanding that there are individuals out there with, let it be a Section 8 certificate, or they're just transitioning from a shelter to their first apartment or home, or whatever. We provide, grants up to $2,000 to help them get in that home, right? So we provide grants to keep them in, get them in. And then, of course, we just created the Veterans Food Assistance Program, right? Because we see stressors out there. Look at the economy. Look at I mean, come on, the prices are out of control right now, inflation, groceries and so forth. Then you have strikers, and so we have a lot of unknowns out there. But the known now, Marty, is that the insecurities to keep individuals in their home, get them in a home as well as put food on their table, were lacking. So DVNF
Yeah.
created that Veterans Food Assistance Program known VFAP. So that started October 1st. All three programs is our new fiscal. We're starting it. anyone out there that needs help, please contact us through the www.dvnf.org. Look under how we help, go to the program that you want, and then you can apply right there. And we'll do our best. As you know, it's always a first come, first serve. We have a budget. We just started the new fiscal. And believe it or not, Marty, our Veterans Food Assistance Program, the first day we opened it up, we have more than 89 applicants. And that's just showing that there is insecurity out there for food, for veterans. And that's just one day. So that's interesting on how we're starting to see the data in terms of who, where the need is in certain locations, and so it's sad, but then again, we're blessed to have donors and so forth to contribute to the Disabled Veterans National Foundation, so we can utilize these funds and actually serve our veterans and so forth. And I'm very thankful for Mission Possible as well. I want to let you know that, Maury. It's just wonderful to be your friend, number one, to learn from you as well, and all our podcasts as well as our conversations, so forth. And I think the material is definitely hitting home. We have more than 3,143 and counting daily, free registered users. And, we've been blessed with that. So we're hoping that we can continue to serve more. And, you did mention in our last conversation that you wanted to do a little bit more for Mission Possible. Have you thought about that a little bit furthermore? Because, you got a wonderful download book and so forth, right? We have the Mission Possible app, right? We have our 7 classes right there. You have your tutorial, you have your videos and voiceover, your Don't Worry Solution book.
Right.
What's been on your mind? I know you wanted to do more. You've been talking to me about you feel you want to do more. I think you're doing wonderful, but as you know, we can always raise the bar.
Well, what you said is really emblematic of that, Joe. You've done so much, and you're still creating new ways to help veterans and first responders. And none of it solves all the problems, unfortunately.
No.
So we still lay awake sometimes at night and think, what else can I do? And that's somewhere between. But you have to also learn how to turn it off periodically so that your brain can rinse and refresh itself and restore the chemicals that you used in the last day or the last night, and get up ready to address what you can address at the same time. So I'm just thinking about it as we get more people involved and as we have more participants like Tom and some of the other people that have participated with us in the podcast, to let us know if there's something else that would fit in to that kind of mind-body technique, something that you feel is not addressed, and that would be helpful to you. I'm tossing it around at this point.
Well, yeah, I think it's if it's like I said, you can lead a horse to water, Marty, but you can't make him drink, right?
Yeah.
If you're in the military, they drown you. But out here in the civilian world, it's like, okay, with freedom or whatever. But it's so hard for individuals to slow down because you're in your house, you're like, that everything's going by so quick, it seems like nothing shuts down. So your mind is still trying to slow down from that,
right.
But then again, still trying to hang on.
Well, that's why this is really important. And even the topic that we're talking about today, this process of sorting out your futile, useless, damaging worry from the worry that you actually need to do and the things you actually need to address is really, really important, because otherwise it's just an overwhelming mountain of confusion, as Tom was kind of saying, and there's all kinds of stuff that's in there that's just too big for anybody to address. You've got to sort that out to have any chance of being able to really address the things that you can do, because the bad worry is basically the focus of the program is to teach you how to stop creating problems with your mind. That's basically, there's enough problems without having to create more problems with your mind. The mind's very creative, and so it can create things to worry about to distract you from harder things, to kind of, in a way, kind of waste your time. There's a lot of reasons for doing it. But if you want to, if you say, look, I'm not feeling great right now and I want to do something to improve,
Mm.
you got to make a decision. And I think that's why when we first talked, Joe, when the word mission came up, that it struck both of us as, if somebody who's having a hard time can recognize it and wants to take it on and says, this is going to be my mission for the next 3 months, 6 months,
Absolutely.
maybe even 3 months. This is my mission. I'm gonna clean myself up. I'm going to divest myself of problems and bad mental habits that are making it more difficult for me and the people around me. I'm going to go in clean. I'm going to get my mind in shape the way that I have gotten my body in shape in the past.
Absolutely.
And then I'm going to see what I can do with this mess that I'm facing, basically, and see how I can find a way to live my best life, to support my family, to maybe help other people, to take a burden off myself. Um, you have to make the decision first, and then we're offering you a toolbox. The toolbox is
Absolutely.
free. And yeah, it is harder. It's easier said than done, but there isn't much that isn't easier said than done.
Yeah,
Uh,
like I said, the hardest part is just taking it. If you can get yourself alone for 10 minutes,
yeah, yeah,
just to sit in a chair, close the door. Put yourself in timeout,
yeah,
turn the TV off, whatever, and just
right,
relax a little bit, and just think about your day that day. Take a day, and mindfulness day. Just think about your
yeah,
day. Not how your morning went. Just think about the now, right now. Okay, this is how I'm feeling. Let's revisit that quickly, and just exercise. Do a little bit of breathing. Just relax a little bit. Get out of the fast-paced lane. And just
yeah,
move over to the middle, then go to the slow lane and take an exit for yourself and relax. I think that's the hard part, is getting that personal time. But if you call it relax going to the gym, then you can go to the gym, right? Some people
right.
go to the gym to relax. They jump on a
And you can
treadmill,
combine
whatever.
that way. You do your workout, you take 10 minutes after your workout, you stretch out,
Absolutely.
you breathe, you get
Exactly.
into your body, you kind of organize your mind a little bit. That's a great time to do it if you do it. But
Absolutely. You're already in the mix of working your body
yeah,
out. Might as well add the, your brain housing group to
right.
your
Or you
tricep
do it.
group.
Right, exactly. You can do it while you take a walk. You can do it while you take
Absolutely.
so there's ways to do it. First thing you have to do is decide that it's important to do. And
Marty,
if you do,
really, really good conversation today, and I really appreciate it because I know anxiety is high out there. It seems like everyone has anxiety, and it's and
yeah,
and it's from social media, or it's from what you're hearing. That's just, those are pieces of that negative pie. Then of course everybody has family issues, one dynamic or another. Or a death in a family, or paying bills, or can't put
yeah,
food on their table. There are resources out there, and if we can help, please visit us at www.dvnf.org. I want to thank, Dr. Marty Rossman. It's always a pleasure to have you as a co-host, and expertise in mind, body, and spirit. I enjoy all your videos. I do like your lectures and so forth, and I'm a fan, and a friend, hopefully. I know we're friends. And I think
yeah.
that you still have a lot to offer, and you're doing it with Mission Possible as well. I'm
I'm
very
proud to
thankful.
do that.
And I told you, November 12th, we're having a resource fair. We're our annual resource fair. It's in Silver Springs, Maryland. We have a Mission Possible booth set up, with a laptop and so forth. And we have some banners showing the course material and so forth. And we have a wonderful picture of you as well. And you're more than welcome to be a guest at our resource fair in Silver Springs, Maryland, for a
Thank
couple
you.
hours or so. And if
Thank
you will
you.
coordinate that off of the video and all that. But I want to thank you again. You've been wonderful. And the next podcast, I believe, is what, November 2nd, I believe it is. It's on a Saturday. Um, Hopefully I'm right on that date, but I'm going to have a special guest, and it's going to be a great conversation as well. And it's always a pleasure, Marty, always.
Same here, Joseph. It's very heartfelt, and I'm proud and I'm grateful to be a part of it, small part of it. So thanks.
You're more than welcome.